Who's your audience? What do they have to know? And how do I want to make them feel? And because we're still purchasing emotionally and we still want to make those emotional connections.
And you're listening to BBB Business Leaders Unplugged, episode 6, where we sit down with global business leaders, communicators, marketers, authors, you name it, champions in their field who are devoted to helping people and businesses be better. I'm David Quinlan, and today we sit down with communication expert Katy Temple. She's an executive coach specializing in helping leaders connect with audiences on camera or in person with authenticity and engagement. She's coached professional athletes and top business executives in producing the best version of themselves, especially on camera. Here's my conversation with Katy Temple.
Katy Temple, welcome to BBB Business Leaders Unplugged. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
I know. Well, we had the opportunity to chat last week to kind of go over what we're going to talk about today. And, I want to dive into your background, obviously, hear about your days as a broadcaster, as a sports anchor, and, now running your own business. But before I get to that, I thought one good way of setting this up is to really talk about the power of video for business owners or business leaders, especially in today's environment. Why do you think having that connection and being on video with someone else and, investing the time to do that well, why that's so important?
Well, first of all, the data backs up the open rates and the effectiveness of video. So there's data that backs that up first and foremost. But the connection is what we want. And reading somebody's article is great. Great writing is great. But sometimes people don't feel like they have that long to read it. And also, if you're seeing me and hearing me and watching me and you get a feel, you get a vibe, you're able to engage more about what I'm like or anybody on video is like. And so it's just more familiar, it's more intimate, and it's more entertaining.
Yeah. And not just for businesses talking to customers, but internally too. Just having that connection, especially if someone's not in the same location, you can't go down the hall and talk to them in their office. So being able to have that connection, critical.
Yeah, and what's fun about those kind of things is that tone is obvious versus emails. If you're talking about those meetings internally, also emails, there's a lot of talk always, and you hear people talk about, did I write the right thing? Is this the right feeling? Did I say the wrong thing? Do I need to put a smile emoji to make sure that they know that I'm being friendly but fierce? And so when you are able to shoot a quick email or a quick video and just say, hey, how's it going? How's the project? That person can feel your vibe. They can hear your humor. They can feel you on an authentic level. And that's the other thing that's really nice, is that there's no question where somebody's coming from, because you're seeing them, you're seeing how they are, and you're hearing how they're saying it.
Nothing's worse than receiving an email from someone asking you to do something that you don't want to do, and they end it with a smiley emoji, as if it's supposed to make you feel better. They're like, no, sorry. So good. I like having that on camera or that face-to-face. It's easier to swallow that pill if it's, something, maybe the news isn't good.
There's no questioning, right? There's no questioning what the message is, because you're hearing them and you're feeling them, versus trying to wonder, were they too harsh on me? Did I take that personally? All the psychology 101 stuff that we do with emails.
Exactly. Or text message.
Or text messages.
Yeah. Good. Okay. Well, cool. So I've got your LinkedIn pulled up. I love your career journey. I think it's great. You and I share the same background in broadcast news. But you got to do what I've always wanted to do, and that was be a sports anchor and reporter. And gosh, you worked for the Chargers, and you worked in San Diego as a sports anchor. Talk about your journey through television, and then how it actually ended up, coming to Katy Temple Media Coaching. Like, what was the transition for you? Is this something that happened overnight, or was this something kind of that you were thinking about doing for a long time?
In 1997, I was working with a woman who at the time was my mentor. Her name's Andrea Kirby, and she had a media coaching business. And I was working for her in between trying to get my career started. And I loved what she was doing. She was a generation above you and me. And so she was really ahead of her time. and got out of reporting and ended up coaching all athletes and professional teams. So she was focused on sports, and I was working for her, and I loved everything that she was doing. And I learned how to be a better anchor and reporter because of what she was teaching her clients. And I did think at that time, and that was a long time ago, I thought maybe when I get out that I'll do something like that. It makes sense and I love it. And that was 97. Fast forward to me starting my business in 2017. I did my last full-time sports gig was 2010 at the Olympics in Vancouver. And I had been filling in at the CBS in San Diego for years and still do. But I was trying to find, and I know you get this, or anybody that's had a passion or has been in TV, because there's a lot of passion there, trying to find something that matched that passion that you just loved and that you didn't think it was a job, all of the things that you get when we talk about TV. And this is finally it, because I'm fast tracking my clients. I made a lot of mistakes. I was humiliated a lot in TV. I mean, I had a lot of success as well, but it was very hard for a while. And so I take all of those kind of humiliations or those learning situations and the tips, and I try to fast track my clients. So it really makes sense. But the TV career went on from my first job on the air was 1996. And I was in Fresno doing a coach's show with Jerry Tarkanian. And so there I am, I was young, and here I am doing a coach's show. I was producing it, editing it, and hosting it with Tark, and they weren't doing as well at Fresno State as they did when they were at UNLV. So it was a little more challenging, but that was my first full-time job. And from then I went to San Francisco, and then I was on the air in San Diego for 6 years at Fox 6, which is a terrific opportunity. And I was the weekend sports anchor there, and we did a half-hour sports show called That Sunday Sports Show, and I loved that. And then ended up going to work for Fox Sports South in Atlanta, and I was the Braves beat reporter for 3 seasons, and did some stuff for all the other teams that Fox Sports covered. The Hurricanes, who won the Cup at that time. I did some stuff for the Predators. So it was a really good opportunity. And then everything crashed in 2008, as did my career, started crashing with the market. And I got that last gig with the Olympics in 2010. And I thought, okay, I was having a hard time, and I thought maybe I should look to broaden my horizons. So I was in Atlanta, and I moved back to California and was trying to figure out what to do next. And I had a couple opportunities in between, and ended up just jumping right off and saying, I'm just going to do this. It's what I love, and I'm going to just do it. And that was February of 2017.
Wow. And, I'm sure you've been asked this question a lot. How was 2020 for you?
Lost my dad, which was, and it's funny because he died January 31st, and then we're kind of celebrating him and going through this morning, and then this pandemic hits, and you don't know what's going on. Nobody did. And I'm thinking, what's this global pandemic that's stealing my dad's thunder? I remember thinking that. Why do we have to think about that? Because I was so hurt. But so that happened personally. And then professionally, though, it shifted in that I have clients now who need help now that didn't need it before, because I really specialize in making people great around the camera when the camera's on. And as you know, we've all had to now all of a sudden we're in our closets, in our living rooms, and we're supposed to be good on camera. And it's a lot to ask of people, especially that didn't sign up for it. And so what I have found is that people who were really good in person before COVID, confident, especially extroverts, which fed off of that warmth of other bodies and eye contact, are having a hard time engaging on camera. And so I have this new set of clients that I wouldn't have had before. So for that, I'm grateful.
Thanks for sharing that. And I'm curious because, and we talked about this last week a little bit too. Do you find yourself in situations where you're coaching clients, and we've been there, you have the smartest person in the room who may be very charismatic in person and knows his or her stuff, like back of their hand. But once that Zoom call light turns on, it's almost like they crash and they fumble around, and it's just, nerve-wracking, and they feel really uncomfortable. Do you help clients in those situations? And how true is that? I mean, does that happen more often, do you think?
100%. And if you think about it, when you were starting your broadcasting career, you were probably, there was a time when you were terrible and nervous, right? I'm guessing.
Sure.
And so that's where I can really help, because here's why, to your point, that's interesting, is you get these really confident people and then the camera goes on and it's different. There's two ways that it goes different. Number one, it's an emotional attachment where people, for whatever reason, and they're all totally understandable, when that red light or that camera light goes on, there's a shift. They get nervous, they get insecure, it's emotional, they're nervous, they hate seeing themselves on camera, they hate hearing themselves on camera. So there's the emotional attachment to that camera. And then there's the technical, as you know from being in TV, the technical attachment to the camera, which is, I'm not really nervous, but it's not making me look as good as I usually do. I don't know if that's because of my angle or how my head's tilted or how my outfit looks or how's my intonation? It's sucking the energy out of me, because, as you know, the camera shifts things, and that's where people they're blown away. They say, I'm not nervous, but I don't like the way I look, and that's when we say, okay, let's look at this, because the camera shifts you. The camera, as everybody knows, adds weight to you. It changes your voice, it changes your intonation, it changes your vibe. So you really need to, and that's what I do with clients, is we look at that and we say, is it emotional? Are you nervous? Yes. Okay, let's work on the nerves. Is it emotional? Are you nervous? No. Okay, let's see what the camera's doing and make some shifts. Are you too close? Is your chin too high? These little things that make such a big difference.
And lighting. I mean, I don't know how many times I've seen people silhouette out with the backlight behind them, and you can't really see what they look like, or maybe it's their home. You're invited into their home, and then you look around and go, oh my gosh, maybe they should have cleaned up before hopping on camera. Just, I guess, little things like that you really have to pick up on.
Right. And that's one of the things where I'm so sympathetic to everybody, in that nobody signed up for this. And now they have to look good on camera, and, you know, they've got kids and dogs and they're in this small room, and how do I know where to look? And it was too much to think about, David. It's not fair. And so that's what I do now, is the first audit is, how's your lighting? Why does that matter? How's your background? Why does that matter? And how's your shot? Where are you looking? And why does that matter? And and we're still doing it. I'm a year out and we're still doing that, because people have too much going on and they're literally just trying to make it work. And so that's still part of the curriculum, but very important, very important.
Can you talk a little bit about being authentic and having that authentic connection with someone? Because you can start looking at yourself in the camera on your screen, and you kind of lose track of what you're talking about, and you lose your authenticity. Talk about maybe some tips or ways your clients can keep things authentic and on point.
Do you remember in your television career where you felt like you were actually finally yourself on camera? Do you remember that?
Oh, sure. It took a while.
Yeah, it takes a while. And so that I always tell my clients to give themselves grace, because it's shocking to me that people think it should just be that easy, to be honest. And so I always just remind them, give yourself grace. We're creating this new skill set, or we're teaching you a new skill set that you didn't even sign up to learn. And so give yourself some grace, first of all. And secondly, the authenticity starts with the writing. It just has to, because whether you're creating a video, getting ready for a meeting, getting ready for a presentation or an interview, you really want to start crafting your message, and you want to make it sound like you. So that's the first part of the process, is write your message. Now practice it out loud to make sure that the words sound like you. How does it feel coming off your tongue? Is that a word that you would use, or did you look that up in the thesaurus? It's very easy to have a beautifully written message here, but if it doesn't translate authentically, then no one's going to buy it. So that's the first process, is really honing in on an authentic message. And then once you get that, then it's about practice. And people say, what do I do with my hands? And I say, well, what do you usually do with your hands? And if they talk a lot, I tell them, don't change who you are unless it's very distracting. But if you talk with your hands, talk with your hands. If you have a certain accent, use that. If you are funny, be funny. If you're sarcastic, be sarcastic. So first of it is in the message, and then you want to practice really just having a conversation on camera. I know that sounds it's easier said than done, but those are the tips for authenticity. Write as you would write or how you would say it, and then practice it and be you on camera. Just have a conversation.
For those people who may be avoiding the on-camera conversations with people and just, you know what, we'll just do it without the cameras on, or we can just do a phone call. Are they missing out on an opportunity, do you think?
Yes. And I think that they know that. And maybe they just don't care, but here's what we're doing. We're in this pandemic and we're trying to do business, and everyone's distracted and everyone's scared, and it's gotten a little better. But when you're connecting and you're showing compassion in your eyes, in your face, in what you're saying, you're making that connection. So part of it is business. Most of it's business, where I can trust you more if I can see you and I know that you're not on your cell phone, or I know, you're not walking around cleaning your apartment. These are all the things that people will do, and there's no proof. There's no proof that they're not doing it. And so there's danger there, but not being present. And then if I'm looking at you, then I know you hear me, and we all want to be seen and heard. So there's the business part. And then the other part is that everyone had a rough year, even if people were really, had success in business, or it was really nice to be with their family. There's a sort of loneliness and kind of grayness that everybody had. And so being on camera is bringing people warmth during this really kind of crazy time.
Yeah, and it sounds like it's, we're going to be like this for a while. Just the face-to-face on a screen or a mobile device. I don't see that changing anytime soon.
Not for a lot of people, not if it makes sense for budgets and that kind of thing.
So it makes sense to make the investment now and practice, get good at it while everyone else is doing the same thing.
Right, agreed.
I saw, you have some great reels on your website, on your LinkedIn page. We'll link to them at the bottom of the of this video and in the article. But one of the video clips, you talk about knowing your audience, and I love that topic because I think that's critical. Because when you are speaking to a colleague or a potential client or to a group of people, really understanding who you are talking to and how you can connect with that specific audience or that specific person, that could really make the difference between a meaningful conversation or a meaningful dialogue.
Agreed. And that's the other thing is, it's people know this, David. These professionals and these executives and these sales teams and these athletes that I coach know this. But again, going back to the big picture, these are reminders. And so when you've got something to do, whether it's a presentation or a video or an interview, whatever you're going to do, as opposed to just accepting the opportunity and then prepping for it, I like to encourage my client to stop and think, okay, first and foremost, who's your audience? What do they have to know? And how do I want to make them feel? And because we're still purchasing emotionally, and we still want to make those emotional connections to people that are in the trade or a general audience, then you need to switch up your storytelling or your examples so that it is connecting with them, and your language, quite honestly. So if you're a doctor and you're talking to a trade magazine, you can use that jargon and you can get lost in that jargon because your audience is going to understand it. But if you're going on a local TV station to talk about an updated drug in the morning, we got people, morning audiences are people kind of rushing around, getting ready for work and getting ready for school. So they're kind of half listening, and you want to keep it more general so that it's not intimidating and that they understand that language. And that really that should go to any audience. If you're talking to younger people and you're going to use a music example, use their kind of music versus boomers. If you're going to talk about, Stevie Nicks or something like that. So, and you don't have to make a big shift, but it's really important. Those little shifts make a big difference.
Yeah, they do. And it picks up everything. So, you know what I mean? Just if, I think I was joking with you, I was on a webinar and I was cracking jokes and then it was dead silence. So I had to tell people to use the chat function to say, hey, you can laugh at my jokes. Just type in LOL or put an emoji on there. Let me know that you're there listening.
And that was authentic. That was authentic and that was smart. I mean, we are humans. We are humans. My
joke still tanked. I had a couple laughs, but it still tanked.
You tried. And people appreciate vulnerability, right?
So before I start asking you about some simple steps that I like, our listeners to maybe jot down some notes if they want to start, incorporating video into their day-to-day operations. I want to ask you about that. But first, every time I have a guest on this show, I always ask the question about our standards and what BBB stands for. And we're a standards-based organization. So things like trust, integrity, excellence, honesty, those are our North Stars. They are what drive us and what really sets our organization apart, and so do our business members. This may be hard to do here, but I'm hoping you can help me connect why maybe some of those values are important and how that should come across, if that's important for your business, how that should come across in video. I don't know if you're tracking me on that, but it's...
I got you. It goes back to really the messaging.
Okay.
You want to figure out who's your audience, how do you want to make them feel, what do they have to know, and how much time you have. And then you backtrack. Because what's really hard for people, including me, and I'm guessing you, when you were doing TV, is especially if you're passionate about what you do, and I'm guessing a lot of your audience is, you want to get all that information out. You have so many great things to say, and all this stuff is going to help everybody. And it takes discipline to rein that in and think about one thing at a time, especially for creating videos. And so the first thing is, what's that story? What is that story? And then going from there. But if it's, values or integrity, that's all in your language and your branding.
Right. And then incorporating that onto video.
Of course.
Got it. So for a business owner out there who say, hey, you know what, I'm going to bite the bullet and I am going to incorporate video in my everyday operations now. Mm-hmm. Where do I begin? How do I get started? Do I need to purchase expensive equipment, or can I just use the devices that I already own?
Great question. And there's just a wide variety of that. It really depends on, part of that is personal and or professional. In other words, what's the goal? What's your budget? And what does that look like? There's various ways you can do that. You can go, a lot of people can just do it like this at home. I would definitely purchase a light, because you always want to have light on your face, especially you can't control the weather outside.
Yeah.
And so the light for sure, a microphone if you can, and a clean background, or you can choose to have professional videos done, which is always a fun experience. And it's nice to have other people helping you tell your story. So it really just depends. The first thing is, okay, what's the goal of the video? What's the goal of the video? And how, then you start thinking, how many do I want to do? What do I want to say? How long are they going to be? What does that look like? And then you go from there.
Talk about your clients, by the way. You mentioned
answers to these questions.
I'm trying to stump you here, but you're rapid fire. I love it. This is great. Tell me about your clients, because you mentioned you had some athletes and obviously some entrepreneurs. I bet people would be surprised on the caliber of clients that you help that are trying. You would think they would be naturals when it comes to being on video, but that isn't always the case.
And that goes back to the people that aren't just not comfortable on camera, or they're not coming across on camera. Or the other thing that's really interesting is successful and confident people are really good extemporaneous communicators. The challenge there is that we can't talk that much anymore because nobody wants to hear it. And it's not going to be as engaging on video in a presentation as it is in person. And so one of the things I have to do with these confident executives is get them, if they, a lot of them are, I'm very good extemporaneously, okay, but you can't keep going on and on and on. We need to rein it in and get right to the point. And so my clients range. I have founders, I have CEOs, I have CFOs. Founders doing the pitching is a big one, helping them with decks and stuff like that. I do a lot of workshops with sales teams. I have people that are getting ready for a presentation. The professional athletes that I work with are usually transitioning into broadcasting or something outside of sports. So you would think, so Tony Gwynn Jr., I can brag about him because he was my first client. And so you'll never forget your first client. And he needed help because he was getting opportunities to broadcast. And so even though, to your point, these athletes are used to having that mic in their face at awkward and terrible times, it's different now that they're running the show. Now we got to figure out, how do I sit? How do I stand? What do I wear? What kind of freedom do I have when I talk to the producers? How do I become a good interviewer? How do I become a good analyst? How do I break down that game in a short amount of time? How do I have chit chat with the anchor? I mean, as you know, one of the most difficult things in TV is the small talk on the desk.
Right.
It's one of the smallest things, but one of the most difficult things. And that's a skill. Some people are really just naturally great at it, but it's also a skill. And so that's what I work on with these athletes. Some of them want to be spokespeople for other companies. Some of them want to go on the speaking tour. And so what's great about the athletes is that they're competitive. And quite honestly, these CEOs are too.
Oh, sure.
So they're competitive. And if they're coming to me, then it means that they want to be great versus me just going out and working with current athletes who may or may not think that they need help.
That's so cool.
Yeah. So and it keeps me, I love sports. I'm passionate about it. And so it keeps me engaged, which I love.
Yeah, that's great. I would not have guessed that. So that's fantastic.
Yeah, it's great.
You hear this word or this phrase a lot these days, Zoom fatigue. Is it a thing?
Yes. Yes. And you know what they say, try to minimize your Zooms, try to make them calls if you can.
Yeah.
I don't think that there's a perfect answer. I think if it's a big deal, you rein it in do you need 30 minutes or can you get it done in 15? But it's about being intentional is the word I'm looking for. Everything is about being intentional, especially with video, because you have such a small amount of time to make an impact. And I think that what's hard is that the other part of just always being on camera and making it exhausting is that we're all, especially those who's still just working from home, it's a little zombie-like in that we're walking around a little bit. We just had a call with this person. We're just going to go grab a bite in the kitchen. There's not a different space to wake us up. There's not stimulus of walking in the street and seeing other people that becomes creative or inspirational. And so there's a zombie feeling of just staying in the same place and getting on the camera. That is really, really hard. And part of that is, again, can you make it shorter? Does it have to be on camera? Can you make it a phone call?
You're going to scold me here because I knew better and I did this anyway. And I didn't realize until I was on camera during a Zoom call, but I wore a sweater with black stripes. And and as soon as I'm on the call and I start talking and I'm looking at my screen popping up, it was just distracting. And I don't wear stripes on video. I should have known better, and I wasn't even thinking about that.
I'm not going to scold you
because I was going to say people need help knowing what to wear, myself included. I mean, there's some do's and don'ts, obviously, when you're on these video calls on your outfit, on your actual look.
Yes, and I think that when you and I were doing TV, it was a little more strict, where it was always solids and those kind of things. But the idea for video is eliminate all your distractions, all of them. And there's a lot of them. And so one of them is clothes. So a lot of people are using more print, and people kind of watch the news and they see that women and men are having more flavor, for lack of a better phrase, in their clothes. That's one thing. The second part of that is you have to test it on camera to see how it's coming across. You don't know until you test it. And so and this is what I tell my clients, you could look like $1 million in the mirror on your way to a Zoom call, and the camera just doesn't pick it up well. And sometimes that's light reflection. Sometimes that's pattern. Sometimes it's just how it's wearing on your body, because generally speaking, you should wear more fitted things. But you don't know until you turn it on. And so I implore everybody, I don't care how good you look in that mirror, get on that Zoom or Teams or whatever you're using 15 seconds before, and look and make sure that the camera is picking you up as you want it to pick you up. Make sure, double check everything. You just never know. And the other opportunity that gives you is locking in and saying, forget what just happened and where I'm going, but I've got David Quinlan in 10 seconds. So lock in, visualize how I want this to go, and be really present.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. Before we go to our rapid fire question round, by the way, this has been great. It's been 30 minutes and it feels like it's been 10.
You're
so
easy.
You have made this very easy for me. So thank you. I was going to ask you though, what grade do I get here? Because, minus my design taste in the background, that's a little 1990s office that I'm in, but am I okay? Did I do everything right? Any tips?
Like it. You've got a good, you're looking straight at it, which is nice. There's none of this or none of this, or
right.
So you've got that going. You've got light coming on your face, which looks good. And to your point, a lot of people think the window over your right shoulder, people would think if I have that open, but that's going to be great. But it blows you out. And so for anybody listening, if you're going to have light coming in behind and you're insistent on it for whatever reason, make sure you get a light in front of it to balance it out. Awesome. But you're well lit. There's not too many distractions back there. What people have bookshelves, and sometimes they're as such that you're kind of wondering what they're reading. And if I'm like, is that Phil Jackson, Sacred Who? then I don't hear what they're saying. And the bottom line is we're trying to exchange messages here and make connections. But if I'm trying to figure out what book you're reading, then I'm not listening to you.
I love Andy Cohen, and I watch, What's Happening Live show. And the whole time I'm looking at all his books and all his little knickknacks that he has in his office. And it's cool, whatever, but it is distracting. So that's funny that you said that. Think about that, the books. Okay. All right. Rapid fire question time. You know the rules. I'll just go through as many questions as I can. Quick answers, and hopefully I won't stump you, but
is there a time? Do I have to get a certain amount in by a certain amount of time?
No. If I stump you, we'll just go to the next one. So we'll just do it and then see where it takes us.
Okay. Sounds great.
Okay. So right now, what TV show, podcast, or book are you reading?
Just finished Schitt's Creek. Devastated it's over. And baseball. Book is a book I'm reading 2 books. John Maxwell's book on the things that successful people do. And then I'm reading a book on raising your vibration for my spiritual side. Awesome. And podcasts, always Oprah, some sports ones, a little Smartless every once in a while with Bateman and Will Arnett and Sean Hayes. I don't do a lot of podcasts, but I do always listen to Oprah.
Cool. All right. I like those. Good answers. Who's your favorite, or who was your favorite boss?
My favorite who?
Boss. Your best boss that you ever had.
My favorite boss I had a couple. It's funny. I've had a couple terrible bosses, and I've had a couple great bosses. And I don't know that I can pick one, but Al Pando was the one that hired me at Fox 6 in San Diego, and he hired me when I was very green. And he was very honest about that, but he also gave me the opportunity. And so I will always be grateful for him. And then Steve Craddock is who I worked for in Atlanta, and he hired me. I was his production coordinator, and then went to go do TV and came back to him as an anchor. And he also gave me that opportunity on a really big stage, and also a good person. And so I think those two stand out as far as TV goes.
Perfect. Now that the Chargers are in Los Angeles, are you a Chargers fan?
I'm a Raiders fan.
Are you? Okay. So it didn't even matter that the Chargers left. You've been a Raiders
I
fan.
was born in Oakland, so I am a Raiders fan. I met John Madden when I was 12 years old. I was really excited.
Cool.
And I've always loved the Raiders. I really always wanted the Chargers to do well, especially when I was covering them. I really wanted them to do well in San Diego. It's devastating that they left San Diego.
Yeah. Yeah, my brother's down there and he was heartbroken. Even though 49er fans. Yeah.
Devastating.
Yeah, I can imagine. Biggest aha moment for you in 2020?
Yeah, I mean, I think that I could go a lot of directions, but you read about the plague and you read about destruction in history. And we had 9/11 and we've had some really bad stuff. We've had a lot of natural disasters. We've had a lot of social issues that are really playing themselves out right now that are devastating. And then we have this pandemic. And it was one of those things where, okay, yes, I've been alive long enough. And now I'm experiencing what our parents or our grandparents experienced when certain things came up. And that's happening. And we lost over 500,000 people, and there's this global pandemic and nobody knew what was going on, and everyone's trying to find their way through it. And yet we can make it, and yet we're going to be okay.
I really like that answer. Great. Thank you. Final question. Best part about being your own boss and running your own business?
It's such a great question. I think I love the fact that I'm responsible and I get to find my own way. And you don't know that at the beginning, but people tell you. You meet these beautiful people that are in your circle once you go out on your own, and you're meeting all these other entrepreneurs, and they tell you there's no specific way to do it. And you get to learn on your own and make your own mistakes. And that's what I love about it, I think. And I think that I keep saying I think, and I tell my clients, don't say I think, because that's the word of doubt. So there you go. So you don't want to use any words like I think, I believe, because you want to be specific. Just side note.
Sure. Yeah.
I love growing into myself. I also feel like, I'm being totally honest here, there's ageism out there, and it worries me about going back into corporate America, and knowing that I can do my own thing and provide for myself and create this life that I want because of my own hard work is very rewarding. It's risky and it's scary, but it's also a blast and rewarding. Very cool. Well, you're an inspiration, Katy, and I love your story. I love your journey. Seriously, it's an inspiration, and I feel honored to have spent the last 40 minutes with you talking, and I could talk your ear off for another 40 minutes to an hour. So thank you so much for being on the show. Thanks for having me. Pleasure. And we'll stay in touch. Yeah, I'd love it. Great. Hang on right there, and I'll